If one day you happen to read a compliment about an achievement you created with your own hands, yet the name being praised is not yours, the feeling is like being torn apart from the inside. I, Kouvr Annon, once believed that if I worked hard enough, good things would naturally come. That was before I set foot in HalcyonTech, a high-tech company celebrated as a haven for innovation, a place where ideas could change the world. On my first day, walking into that gleaming glass building, my heart was pounding with excitement, convinced that this would be the dream startup, the place where I could find my true worth, where effort would be fairly recognized. I did not know then that behind that dazzling facade was a cold labyrinth filled with traps, a place where trust could be shattered in a single blink. I joined HalcyonTech as a content lead in the emotional marketing department, responsible for designing and implementing creative campaigns that would build connections between customers and the brand. The work demanded sensitivity, perseverance, and a deep love for every small detail. I cherished that job as if it were a part of my own flesh and blood. Every time I saw a campaign I had written and directed being warmly received, I felt my confidence grow a little stronger. I was not working for fame, nor for hollow praise. I worked because I believed that genuine relationships between brands and people must be built on sincerity and true empathy back then. HalcyonTech felt like a sweet promise to young people like me, those who still believed that kindness and hard work would eventually be recognized by the world. I was not naive. I knew that competition and conflict existed everywhere, yet I did not expect that the first wounds would come from colleagues I once trusted. My direct manager, a man named Brandon, always appeared friendly on the surface. He would pat me on the shoulder and say encouraging things like, "You have great potential. You just need a little more patience." I believed him, as any inexperienced young person might easily believe hollow encouragements. During brainstorming sessions, I was always the one offering bold ideas, different scripts, and new directions for emotional marketing campaigns. But whenever a campaign succeeded, my name never once appeared in any of the summary meetings. The ones praised and honored were always Brandon and a few of the so-called veterans. At first, I comforted myself that it did not matter, that the important thing was learning and improving each day. But strange signs started to pile up. There were meetings where I was summoned only to receive vague criticisms about my attitude toward collaboration. My reports were edited without notice, and when products launched, the core ideas were attributed to someone else. I will never forget that afternoon when I accidentally overheard a conversation between two senior managers at the corner of the pantry, a place where they did not think anyone else could hear. One of them sneered, saying the kid Kouvr does a good job, but if she gets too much attention, it would not be good. Just keep her as an idea machine. The other burst into laughter, replying, "Squeeze her dry and replace her with someone cheaper. The company needs ROI after all." I stood frozen behind the door, my coffee cup cold and trembling in my tight grip. I should have left right then, but those crushed under the weight of expectations and pride often deceive themselves better than anyone else. I told myself I just needed to try harder, that someday they would have to acknowledge me. The truth is, I stayed, and in doing so, I only dug deeper the grave for my own trust. I worked like a machine, endless white nights, campaigns written with blood and tears, fingers typing and retyping every line of content until my eyes burned so badly I could no longer see the screen clearly. I lived on the fragile hope that I was getting closer to a breakthrough. Then the turning point came faster than I expected. A major project. The We Are Future campaign, aimed at global brand repositioning, was assigned to our team. It was the golden opportunity, the stage where all previous efforts could finally be rewarded. I poured every ounce of my energy into it, scripting, conceptualizing, directing every frame of video production, every blog post, every tiny detail. I had never felt so alive. I believed that this time. No one could deny my contributions. On the launch day of the campaign, I wore the best outfit I owned, sitting in the grand hall, my heart trembling with a mixture of nerves and hope. But when the opening video played on the giant screen, when the achievement slides appeared one after another, I realized I had been completely erased from the picture. Brandon stood proudly on stage, taking full credit for the campaign. Once again, the name Kouvr Annon was nowhere to be found. Worse yet, when he accepted a prestigious award from a major partner, he even joked in front of the entire company, thanks to the team, especially those silently supporting behind the scenes like Kouvr, as if I were merely someone who fetched coffee and handed out papers. The applause erupted, but to me, each clap felt like a blazing slap across my already shredded dignity. I sat frozen amidst a crowd roaring with laughter and indifferent glances. When everyone rushed to the stage for photos, I slipped away quietly, each step heavy as if I were walking over the shattered remnants of the trust that had once upheld me. That night, I sat alone in my small room, the broken yellow light falling on a messy desk scattered with drafts and unfinished projects. My phone kept buzzing with congratulatory messages for Brandon, not a single one remembering me. The water in my coffee cup had gone cold and sour, its bitterness seeping into my throat as I stared blankly at the laptop screen displaying the massive interaction numbers from the campaign I had poured my soul into creating. But instead of pride, all I felt was an immense, cold, and meaningless void. For the first time in my life, I truly wondered whether my true worth ever existed in this world. HalcyonTech, once the symbol of dreams, had become nothing more than a symbol of blatant betrayal and irreparable loss of trust. That night, for the first time in months, I took off the small leather bracelet from my wrist, the one that had symbolized my vow to always believe in myself. I placed it on the table next to the cold coffee cup, feeling as hollow as if I myself had been wrung dry and discarded like a broken toy. I did not know what I would do next. I only knew that a part of me had died that night, silently, without witnesses, without mourning. There are moments in life when a person feels they have reached the depths of failure, only to realize that it is merely the beginning of another journey. After that fateful night, I did not cry, nor did I scream. I simply sat in silence as the light from the laptop screen blurred in my weary eyes. In the days that followed, I moved through the company like a ghost, performing the remaining tasks with the cold mechanical motions of someone who no longer held on to hope. No one noticed the change in me, or if they did, they pretended not to see it. Brandon still walked around the office with the air of a victor, weaving tales of creativity he had never truly possessed. I remained at my desk, my hands moving across the keyboard, but my heart no longer beat for belief. 1 week after the campaign, I received notice that I was being transferred to a side project, one with almost no budget and no real importance. Brandon simply pushed an old, worn-out file toward me, his gaze carrying a disdain he no longer bothered to hide. I understood this was their way of quietly pushing me aside, hoping I would grow tired and leave without the need for cumbersome procedures. But instead of breaking down as they expected, I sat there, turning each page of the document, quietly reigniting a faint spark within myself. I had lost faith in them, in the company I once admired, but I had never lost faith in myself. Deep down, I knew my true values still existed. I had simply not yet found the right way to show it to the world. I began staying late at the office, but not to complete the meaningless tasks they assigned. Instead, I researched the market, analyzed customer data, and revisited the emotional marketing strategies that had once made me fall in love with my work. I opened old folders, combing through the ideas that had never been realized, campaigns rejected only because they did not align with fleeting trends. In those forgotten files, I found a fragile spark of belief. Like discovering a trace of warmth in a long winter, I started drafting a plan for myself, not to salvage my career at HalcyonTech, but to prepare for a quiet rebirth, one where I could reclaim my worth without seeking anyone's permission. But life is never simple. As I began taking the first steps toward my own transformation, challenges descended upon me like a ruthless test from fate. One morning, while reviewing old data, I discovered that the company had revoked my access to the internal database. All the resources, all the research and campaigns I had helped build, vanished without a trace. I sat frozen before the screen, feeling as though someone had just strangled the breath from my lungs. Brandon had made his move. He wanted to erase every trace of my existence from the system, to deny my contributions as if I had never been there. With no access to the archives, I was forced to rely on memory and the few files still scattered on my personal drive. That night, for the first time in months, I left the office without looking at anyone, without caring about the scrutinizing eyes around me. I wandered the empty streets, my mind echoing with questions that had no answers. Had I been too naive to believe that hard work alone would be enough? Were the manipulators truly the ones who understood the game better than I did? Yet amidst the chaotic thoughts, a softer, firmer voice rose within me, like the voice of the younger self I used to know, whispering, "Do not let them decide your worth." I returned to my small apartment, turned on the laptop, and reopened the personal projects I had abandoned when work consumed all my time. I reviewed old contacts, former collaborators, those who had once praised my work in past campaigns. I realized that even if the old company could erase my name from their system, they could not erase the memories of what I had created from the hearts of those who had seen it. I had only a handful of connections left, but it was enough to kindle a fragile hope. Yet hope always comes with trials. One of the people I had once worked closely with, now holding a high position at a rival company, turned cold when I reached out. He gave excuses about restructuring, but the evasive glance and the mechanical nod told me the truth. I had been blacklisted, labeled as one of those troublesome ones who did not know their place. In the days that followed, rejection met me at every turn. Messages I sent received only silence. Interviews were canceled at the last minute, though I had done nothing wrong. The invisible stain branded by my former company haunted every step I took. There were nights I stayed awake until dawn, staring at the streetlights through the window, wondering whether this battle was worth it. It would have been so much easier to give up, to accept some trivial job, to forget all the pain and abandoned dreams. But every time that thought crept in, I remembered Brandon's eyes, the indifferent smiles of those who sat atop my efforts without shame. I knew that if I gave up, I would lose more than a career. I would lose the part of myself that had fought to survive. And so I chose to prepare quietly. I enrolled in short courses on digital marketing, strategic management, and entrepreneurship. Every morning, I woke up with a single goal: to rebuild from nothing. I started rewriting market research reports in my own way, drawing from everything I had learned and witnessed. I joined small communities, sharing knowledge, and slowly rebuilding real relationships, ones founded not on flattery, but on genuine trust. In those forums, I met others who had been betrayed, who had lost faith just like I had. their stories, the failures they had endured, made me realize I was not alone. There is a strange strength in shared pain, in knowing that the heartbreak you suffered had once torn through someone else too, and if they could rise again, so could I. I wrote everything down, every small idea, every strategic move, every lesson learned from each fall. There was no one left to pat my back or promise me stairways to glory. Only myself remained, and the belief forged in fire that true worth cannot be taken unless you surrender it. One night, after completing the first business plan draft for my small startup project, I sat back and looked around the dark room, lit only by the glow of my computer screen, the cold coffee cup sitting beside me. I exhaled deeply, not with disappointment, but as if shedding an old skin that had weighed on my soul for far too long. I knew there was still a long road ahead, still fierce challenges waiting, but this time I would walk it with my own feet, carrying a belief that would no longer be misplaced. There are days that seem peaceful, yet beneath the calm surface, everything is quietly shifting. After months of preparation, I decided to take the first step in launching my own venture. I built a small brand specializing in emotional marketing solutions for young businesses seeking a genuine voice to connect with their customers. Without noise, without flashy promotions. I started with small projects, with communities I had quietly nurtured before. At first, it was just a few scattered contracts, the income far from enough to make a living. But more than money, I regained something I once thought I had lost: my trust in my own true value. One late afternoon, while reviewing the first campaign for a sustainable fashion brand, I received a message from an old colleague. The message contained only a few words, yet it made my heart race. The old company is in chaos. The new campaign has failed miserably. I read those words again and again, feeling a strange mixture of curiosity and calm. I did not need to ask for more details, because just by observing how they operated after casting me aside, I had known this day would inevitably come. I made myself a cup of coffee, sat down in front of the laptop, and quietly searched for more information. Leaked internal articles and whispers across the marketing world all pointed to the same truth. HalcyonTech had launched a major campaign to salvage their fading brand image, but it had collapsed swiftly. The ideas were outdated, the messages hollow, and there was no longer any sincerity connecting with the customers. Engagement metrics plummeted. Major partners began hesitating to continue collaborations. I smiled, a very faint smile, not out of gloating, but because I understood that what was happening was not an accident. It was the price of betrayal. Not long after, an unexpected opportunity found me. A partner who had once worked with HalcyonTech, someone who knew well the contributions I had made to past campaigns, reached out. He expressed a desire to collaborate with me on a project to reposition their brand. When he mentioned that HalcyonTech was also competing for this contract, I remained silent, revealing no emotion. I knew this would be a quiet yet fierce confrontation, one where revenge would be exacted not through accusations, but through results. I threw myself into the work as if my life depended on it. I delved deep into the brand's story, extracting every detail that could touch the hearts of customers. I applied all the emotional marketing techniques I had once studied to exhaustion. I worked with a small group of people I trusted, people who also knew what it was like to lose faith. We did not have a massive budget like HalcyonTech, nor a powerful PR team, but we possessed what they had long lost: sincerity, empathy, and a true hunger to connect. On presentation day, I entered the meeting room with a clean and meticulous plan, each slide crafted to touch the hearts of the listeners. I did not try to embellish or persuade with flowery words. I simply told a a true story about why that brand existed and how it could continue to live on in the hearts of customers. When I finished, the room fell silent for a brief moment before genuine applause broke out. Filled with recognition, I bowed my head slightly, feeling a surge of emotion, both unfamiliar and yet deeply familiar this time. I had stood on my own. Just 1 week later, I received a confirmation call that the project had been awarded to me. News traveled quickly, and somehow, I knew it would reach HalcyonTech. They had not only lost a major contract, they had also lost the fragile credibility they were desperately clinging to. When I received the official email from the partner, filled with words of respect for my professionalism and creativity, I sat in front of the screen for a long time, simply absorbing the fullness of that moment. There were no cheers, no tears, only a quiet peace saturating my soul. Yet storms rarely end so easily. One evening, while preparing for a planning meeting to expand the campaign internationally, I received an anonymous email containing threats, hinting that if I continued to push into the market, there would be undesirable consequences. I knew someone from the old company, or someone connected to them, was trying to intimidate me. But this time, I was no longer the same Kouvr who would have shrunk from vague threats. I simply saved the email as evidence and continued my work as if nothing had happened. The next day, another piece of information reached me. Brandon, the man who had once pushed me aside, was now under internal investigation for allegations of embezzlement and manipulating campaign data. The reports I had quietly collected, the evidence of tampered numbers used to inflate fake successes, had become a ticking time bomb he had set off himself. I did not have to lift a finger, for the truth simply could not be buried forever. When I read the news on a private forum, I felt only a soft sadness, like watching a rotting building finally collapse. But life always seems to enjoy adding unexpected twists. One afternoon, while discussing campaign expansion strategies with a partner, I received an invitation from another major tech company, a direct competitor of HalcyonTech. They not only offered me a salary twice as high as what I had earned before, but also promised me near complete creative freedom. I sat quietly in front of the email contract, my mind heavy with thoughts. Perhaps this was a sign that my silent battle had truly ended, that I had not only survived betrayal, but had built a solid standing with nothing but my own hands. That night, I sat by the window, looking at the city lights blinking in the distance, reflecting on everything that had passed, from a girl who once believed in empty promises, to someone who had lost all faith in the world, and now, someone who knew her true worth without needing anyone's approval. I knew this journey was far from over, that challenges still lay ahead. But there was one thing I knew for certain: no one could take away what I had built from pain and perseverance. When I signed the new contract, I did not feel as if I were avenging anyone. I was simply reclaiming what should have been mine all along: the right to live according to my true value, the right to build relationships founded on trust and kindness. And perhaps that is the most profound and silent form of revenge anyone can ever achieve. There are moments when everything seems calm, yet beneath that still surface, the most powerful undercurrents are preparing to rise. After signing the new contract, I spent many nights sitting silently in front of the laptop, reading over the plans and strategies I had crafted for this comeback. There were no more half-hearted plans, no more misplaced hopes. Everything I prepared now came from clarity, from hard-earned lessons about lost trust. I knew that to truly create a remarkable comeback, I could not rely on pride alone. I needed strategy. I needed courage. And above all, I needed unwavering persistence. The contract with the new company granted me almost complete creative freedom. I was entrusted to rebuild the brand identity, to plan emotional marketing campaigns, and even more. I was given the right to choose my own collaborators. This was not just another job. It was an opportunity to rebuild from the ashes, to prove that true value cannot be buried under cheap power games. I began selecting my team, not based on polished resumes or shallow reputations, but on sincerity and the genuine ability to connect emotionally. Among them were familiar faces, comrades who had also been cast aside by the old system at HalcyonTech for refusing to bow. In the early days of building the team, I realized that rebuilding is never easy. Many times, old memories rushed back, bringing with them an invisible fear that everything would collapse again. But this time, I did not let myself be swept away by vague emotions. Whenever doubt crept in, I reminded myself of the sleepless nights I had endured, the betrayals I had survived, the projects I had rescued when all seemed lost. I reminded myself that what I was building now was no longer about proving anything to anyone else. It was about restoring justice for myself. Our first campaign for the new company was a brand repositioning project aimed at rekindling the faded trust of customers. I knew that to succeed, I could not follow the old paths. Together with my team, we organized deep discussions, listening carefully to real stories from customers, digging into the experiences that once made them love and then abandon the brand. Every small detail was recorded, every emotional moment distilled into honest and powerful ideas. We did not create a flashy campaign. We built a journey, a heartfelt apology, and an invitation to reconnect sincerely from the heart. On the day of the campaign launch, I stood behind the curtain, feeling an unusual calmness. There was no trembling excitement as before, no illusion that success or failure would define who I was. I simply believed in the process I had gone through. I believed that no matter the result, I had stayed true to the values I had chosen. As the first videos played on the giant screen, telling simple yet touching real-life stories in the most sincere language, I saw the expressions in the room turn still, then light up. It was not just the success of a campaign. It was a genuine connection, something no marketing trick could ever fabricate. When the launch ended, the company representative took the stage, his voice trembling with emotion, saying that this was not just a communications campaign, but a journey of healing trust. Applause filled the hall, but I remained standing quietly in the shadows, feeling a deeper emotion than any external victory, the internal affirmation, the resurrection of a self-respect that had once been trampled. Not long after, the initial successes of the campaign began spreading like silent yet powerful waves. Customer return rates surged. Positive feedback flooded in. The media began to take notice. And this time, when they wrote about the campaign, they mentioned me by name, recognizing me as the one who had led that emotional rebirth. No one could erase my name from the achievements I had built painstakingly with my own hands. While I was busy with meetings and expansion plans, another piece of news momentarily made me pause. HalcyonTech officially announced a major restructuring after a series of consecutive failures. Brandon was suspended, and an internal investigation was publicly launched. Major partners simultaneously withdrew, and their stock price plummeted uncontrollably. I sat alone in my small room, watching the news flashing on the screen, feeling neither satisfaction nor sadness. Everything had unfolded naturally, as a law of consequence, the inevitable result for those who build empires on deception and betrayal. One evening, while packing the office for our move to a new headquarters, I stumbled upon my old leather bracelet, the small item that had stayed with me through my days at HalcyonTech. The The leather was worn, peeling in patches, but the tiny inscription on the silver plate remained intact, "Create." I held it in my hand for a long time, feeling its very light yet profoundly meaningful weight. I knew its journey had come to an end, like a closed chapter in my life. But the lessons it carried would remain forever. I stepped out onto the balcony, looking at the deep night sky, my heart filled with peace. I knew I was ready for a new chapter, one where I no longer needed to fight to prove my worth to anyone. I would simply need to live true to myself, with the resilience and self-respect I had protected through countless trials. This revenge through success did not need fireworks or golden plaques. It only needed one quiet but undeniable truth: I had risen. I had rebuilt from the ashes, and I had triumphed by holding on to my true value. And as the night closed in, I smiled softly, a smile not for anyone else, but for myself. There was no need for external validation, because I had become my own greatest proof for this journey, a journey that had started from the deepest abyss, climbed upwards by hands that refused to let go. There are victories that require no cheering crowds, no bouquets of flowers, no blazing stages. They bloom quietly, like resilient seedlings, beneath parched earth. Silent, yet powerful. After all the turmoil, after months of drowning in loneliness and doubt, I stepped out of the darkness, not with loud declarations, but with undeniable results. The new company I co-founded gradually secured its place in the industry. The emotional marketing campaigns we created not only brought in stable revenue, but also breathed new life into the market, offering a genuine way to connect with customers that many large brands had long forgotten. I did not seek direct confrontation with HalcyonTech or any of those who had once betrayed me. I did not need to. In the real world, revenge through success does not happen in noisy battles. It happens when you quietly rise so high that those who once looked down on you are forced to look up, even if their hearts are filled with bitterness. News of HalcyonTech's decline grew more frequent. The media did not hesitate to analyze the reasons for their failure. And in every article, people pointed to the crumbling of trust, the lack of sincerity in their brand messages, and the internal collapse fueled by ambition and power games. Brandon, the man who once patted my shoulder with a fake smile, was now trapped in an investigation with no way out, his reputation and career disintegrating into dust. I heard that the colleagues who once sided with him, who had turned their backs on me during my darkest days, were now gradually being laid off or left unemployed. Some of them sent me belated apologies, trying to explain that they too were victims of a toxic system. I held no resentment toward them. I understood that in an ecosystem built on fear and manipulation, very few had the courage to swim against the current. Forgiveness was not for their sake. It was for mine, because I deserved to be free, unchained from old grudges. One day, at a major conference on sustainable marketing trends, I was invited to speak about rebuilding a career from ruins. As I stepped onto the stage, the lights fell softly around me, not harsh, not flashy, just enough to illuminate a face no longer carrying the scars of self-doubt. I told my story with a calm voice, as if recounting a rainstorm that had already passed. I spoke about true value, about trust once lost, about building enduring relationships with more than just contractual handshakes. I did not mention the old company, nor accuse anyone. I simply let the truth speak through each small story, each personal experience in which hundreds of people sitting there could see a part of themselves. When I finished, the entire hall stood and applauded. But for me, the greatest reward was not the applause, it was the lightness I felt, knowing that, finally, I had arrived where I needed to be, by the path I had chosen, no longer chasing distorted standards set by others. That evening, when I returned to my small apartment, I opened the window and let the night breeze flow in, carrying the faint chill and the scent of wild grass from the nearby park. I brewed a cup of hot tea, set my laptop aside, and leaned back in my chair, completely relaxed. No more sleepless nights filled with anxiety. No more weary mornings questioning whether I was enough. Now, each passing day stood as proof of my steady existence, a silent yet powerful affirmation that a spectacular comeback is not made in a single moment, but is the result of countless small, steadfast decisions over time. A week after the conference, I received an unexpected email. A prestigious international company, one that had coldly rejected me 3 years ago, was now expressing interest in collaborating on a global campaign. As I read their invitation, a very faint smile rose within me, not out of vengeance, but because I recognized the silent shift of time. 3 years ago, I had knocked on doors asking for opportunities. 3 years later, they were the ones reaching out to me. There was no need for boastful words, no need for fiery revenge speeches, just existing, growing, and shining in my own way was already the sharpest answer. I decided to accept the offer, but I set very clear conditions. Full creative control would belong to me and my team. If they did not agree, I would walk away without a second thought, because after everything, I had learned that internal freedom was worth more than any glamorous offer. They agreed without a single negotiation. And so, a new chapter opened once again, this time without fear overshadowing it, only the excitement of someone who had once lost everything but had learned to rebuild from ashes. On the day the global campaign launched, sitting in a meeting room filled with international partners, I looked around and saw eyes filled with expectation directed at me. No one questioned my capabilities anymore. No one tried to steal my work. I did not need to say much. I simply let the results speak for themselves. Slide after slide appeared. Each idea, each image, each message distilled from a long journey through loss and rebirth. And I knew no one could ever take that away from me again. Maybe out there are still those who believe success is simply standing on the backs of others. Maybe somewhere there are still stories of betrayal and dark power games. But for me, those experiences no longer bleed like open wounds. They had become a new layer of skin, tougher, more resilient, allowing me to continue walking in this harsh world. That night, as the city lights flickered, I sat quietly in a familiar small cafe, slowly sipping a warm cup of tea, watching the stream of people outside the glass window. A rare sense of peace filled my heart, not the false peace that comes from avoiding pain, but the true peace that comes from facing it, walking through it, and emerging stronger and freer on the other side. I smiled, softly, yet full of certainty. If someone were to ask me whether it was worth it, whether it was justified to endure all the pain to arrive at this day, I would not answer immediately. I would simply ask back, have you ever felt like the world was trying to crush you? Yet you still chose to stand, still chose to believe in your true worth, even when everything around you screamed for you to give up. If your answer is yes, then you will understand there is no greater victory than that.